What happens when a billionaire sits alone at his blind date table, only to notice a poor girl sitting by herself at the next one? Tonight's story is filled with suspense, heartbreak, and the kind of romance that proves love can break every barrier. Stay with us, because this isn't just about wealth or poverty. It's about two souls finding each other when the world least expected it. Mavericks Miles stepped into the restaurant with a quiet confidence that always followed him. The staff instantly recognized him, the billionaire who could buy the whole place with a single signature. But tonight, Mavericks wasn't here to flaunt his wealth or demand attention. He was here for something far rarer in his life: company. The table reserved under his name was by the large window, glowing under a crystal chandelier. He took his seat, his hand smoothing the cuff of his midnight black suit jacket. On the surface, he was calm. Inside, he was restless. A blind date. He almost laughed at the thought. For years, women had approached him for his money, his last name, his power. But friends insisted this woman was different, educated, beautiful, and not impressed by his fortune. He leaned back, glancing at the entrance as every couple walked in. His heart expected to feel a spark when she arrived. Minutes slipped by, then more. The waiter approached, offering him the menu with a professional smile. "Not yet," Mavericks replied. His tone was steady, but his chest tightened. He checked his watch, 10 minutes late, then 20. The glass of water before him remained untouched, condensation trailing down its side. Every tick of the clock echoed louder in his mind. By the time an hour had passed, the truth sank in like cold iron. She wasn't coming. His blind date had stood him up. The waiter returned once more, voice careful, almost apologetic. "Sir, would you like to order now?" Mavericks gave a polite smile, the kind that hid the sting of rejection. He was a man who could build empires, negotiate billion-dollar deals, silence entire boardrooms. Yet in this quiet, elegant space, he felt strangely human, forgotten, unwanted, alone. He lifted his glass, sipping water slowly, as though the gesture could erase the weight in his chest. Around him, laughter floated from other tables. Couples leaned close, hands intertwined, smiles exchanged. The very thing he longed for sat all around him, reminding him of what he didn't have. And then, just when he thought the night would be another disappointment, something shifted. His gaze drifted across the restaurant, not toward the glamorous women, not toward the laughter-filled tables. In the far corner, almost hidden, sat a young woman. Her dress was simple, not glamorous, not designed to turn heads, but neat, carefully chosen. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, as if she was trying to shrink into the background. A small plate sat before her, nearly empty. She wasn't eating with joy. She was moving the food around as though stretching every bite. Her head bent low, strands of hair falling forward, hiding her face. But Mavericks noticed what no one else seemed to. There was a quiet beauty in her. Not the loud, sparkling kind that demanded the room's attention, but the kind that whispered, soft, real, unshaken by the world's noise. Something tugged at him, sharp and unfamiliar. Why was he noticing her? Why, after being stood up, was his heart suddenly paying attention to a stranger? Her eyes, when they lifted for just a second, revealed loneliness. A deep kind of loneliness he knew too well. And for the first time that evening, Mavericks Miles didn't think about his wealth, or his status, or the empty chair across from him. For the first time, he thought about the girl in the corner. The poor girl sitting alone. The girl who, without even knowing, had just stolen his attention, and with it, a piece of his heart. Mia sat in the farthest corner of the restaurant, her back straight but her spirit heavy. She hadn't planned to come here alone. Tonight was supposed to be different. Her friend had promised her laughter, company, and maybe, for just one night, a break from the constant weight of survival. But the message came just an hour before. "Sorry, can't make it. Rain check?" Mia almost canceled, too. Almost stayed home in her tiny apartment where the silence always pressed against her chest. But she came anyway. Because sometimes being surrounded by strangers felt less lonely than being alone in four walls. She sat at her table with just enough money to order one dish. Nothing fancy, nothing filling, just something so she wouldn't be asked to leave. She told herself she would enjoy it slowly, stretching every bite, making the meal last as long as her courage could. Her hands, though gentle, carried stories of exhaustion. calloused from working 2 jobs, one in a diner during the day, one cleaning offices at night. Every dollar she earned was carefully folded into envelopes for rent, bills, and food. There was never room for more. Her clothes were simple, a dress she had owned for years, pressed carefully so it looked presentable. She knew it wasn't fashionable, but it was all she had that made her feel a little less invisible. And tonight, invisibility was what she longed for. Yet despite all that, her eyes held something untouchable. A light, a stubborn spark that refused to be stolen by hardship. A reminder that though she carried little, her heart was still rich with hope. Mia glanced at the couples around her. They laughed, toasted, and leaned into each other's warmth. She tried to pretend it didn't sting. But deep inside, she longed for that kind of connection. The kind where you didn't feel like the world had forgotten you. She lowered her head, pushing her fork gently against the plate. She didn't want anyone to notice she had ordered the cheapest dish on the menu. She didn't want pity. She only wanted to survive the evening quietly. What Mia didn't know was that someone had already noticed her. Not just noticed, seen her, truly seen her. Mavericks Miles, the man with a fortune built on empires, sat at the opposite side of the room. But his attention wasn't on the empty chair across from him anymore. It was on her. Her quiet strength drew him in like a magnet. He had seen beauty in every form, painted faces, sparkling gowns, flawless smiles. But he had never seen beauty wrapped in struggle, stitched with quiet dignity. Until now, something inside him shifted. The rejection from earlier faded. The noise of the restaurant dulled. All that remained was the image of a young woman fighting to look unshaken while the world tried to break her. For the first time in years, Mavericks felt something real stirring inside him. Not lust, not curiosity, not boredom. Something deeper, like the whisper of destiny calling his name. He set down his glass, his decision forming before he even realized it. He couldn't sit in his comfortable seat while she sat there in quiet pain. Not tonight. With a slow, steady breath, Mavericks rose from his table. His steps were firm, echoing softly against the polished floor. The billionaire who had everything was about to walk toward the girl who had nothing. And in that single choice, the course of both their lives began to change. Mia nearly dropped her fork when a shadow fell across her table. Her heart leapt as she looked up and froze. Standing there was a man who looked like he belonged on magazine covers, not beside her worn-out plate. Tall, sharp suit, eyes that seemed carved out of mystery and loneliness. Everything about him screamed polished, powerful, untouchable. And yet his smile was gentle. "Mind if I join you?" His voice was deep, steady, carrying no arrogance. He hesitated as if giving her a choice. "My date didn't show," he added, almost with a boyish honesty that caught her off guard. Mia blinked. Men like him didn't sit with women like her. She almost told him no. But then their eyes met and she saw it. A shadow in his gaze, the kind of quiet loneliness that mirrored her own. Her lips parted. Her throat felt dry. But somehow she found her voice. "Sure," she whispered softly. He slid into the chair across from her, his movements graceful yet humble, as if he didn't want to scare her away. For a moment, neither spoke. The restaurant's laughter and music surrounded them, but between them there was a strange, calming silence. Mavericks was the first to break it. He asked about her evening, her work, her life, not in the way of a man making small talk, but as if her words mattered. Mia hesitated at first. She wasn't used to anyone truly listening, but his eyes stayed on hers, warm and patient, not rushing her. So she told him. About working 2 jobs. About the exhaustion that weighed her down. About how once, long ago, she had dreamed of becoming a teacher, but life had forced her to bury that dream under bills and responsibilities. Her voice cracked at one point, but he didn't interrupt. He didn't offer pity or hollow encouragement. He simply listened, closely, intently, like every word was a treasure. For the first time in a long while, Mia felt seen, not for her struggles, not for her empty wallet, but for the heart she carried despite it all. Then came the food. Mavericks had quietly ordered for both of them, and when the waiter placed plates filled with warm, delicious dishes before her, Mia's breath caught. She hadn't eaten this much in weeks. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. I didn't need all this," she murmured. staring at the generous spread. He leaned forward slightly, his smile calm. I didn't order this for you to feel small, Mia. I ordered this so we can share a meal, like two people having a conversation. Nothing more. Her eyes softened. The tightness in her chest eased. It wasn't charity, it wasn't pity, it was respect. And when she laughed, nervous at first, then genuine, it was like music. Mavericks felt something he hadn't felt in years. A spark, not of desire but of hope. In that unexpected conversation between two souls who had walked into the restaurant alone, something quietly shifted. The billionaire who had everything and the woman who had nothing discovered the rarest gift of all, connection. The evening stretched on, soft music humming in the background, golden light falling over their table. Yet inside Mia's chest a storm brewed. Every time Mavericks looked at her, every time he smiled, a single question tightened her heart. Why me? Her fork trembled slightly in her hand. She lowered her gaze, unable to hold his eyes for too long. He was a man polished in power, someone who clearly belonged to a world of silk and crystal. And she? She was a girl who counted coins before stepping into a grocery store. Why would a man like him choose to sit with me? The thought refused to leave her mind. Perhaps he pitied her. Perhaps he thought this was charity. The idea burned, making her shift uncomfortably in her seat. Mavericks, on the other side, was silent, but inside, his doubts echoed just as loud. He had been here before, surrounded by women who smiled at his name, not at him. Women who saw his wealth before they even saw his face. And now, across the table, sat a woman who looked at him with hesitation, not hunger. That difference both warmed him and scared him. What if she thinks I'm buying her attention? What if every gesture I make feels like pity to her? The waiter approached softly, carrying a delicate tray of desserts. A sweet fragrance filled the air, tempting and inviting. But before the plates could even touch the table, Mia shook her head quickly, almost in panic. "No, I can't," she said, her voice tight, her hands curling into her lap. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I don't want more. I can't accept it. I don't want to feel like I owe you." Her words sliced the air between them, heavy and raw. Mavericks looked at her, his eyes softening, his chest tightening with a feeling he didn't expect. He leaned forward slowly, closing the space between them, his voice low but steady. "Mia," he said gently, each word deliberate. "You don't owe me anything. Not a smile, not your time, not even this conversation." He paused, searching her eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I don't want to buy your attention. I just want to sit here, with you, that's all." Her heart quivered at his words. Something about the way he said it, firm, honest, unshaken, made her chest ache. No man had ever spoken to her like that. Not as someone to be saved, not as someone to be bought, but as someone worthy, just as she was. For a long moment she stared at him, her hands trembling slightly. The walls she had built around her heart, walls made of years of struggle, fear, and rejection, cracked. Through those cracks his voice poured in like light. And though doubt still lingered like shadows at the edges of her mind, something deeper began to bloom, a fragile, delicate seed of trust. When they left the restaurant, the city glowed with lights. Mavericks suggested a walk, and Mia agreed. They strolled past small shops and old buildings, places Mia knew well, but Mavericks had never noticed despite living in the same city. She showed him a bakery that sold bread late at night for the homeless, and a park where children played even when life was hard. For the first time in years, Mavericks felt alive outside of his world of luxury. He realized that wealth without love was emptiness. Mia, with her simple heart, was showing him more beauty than money ever had. As they reached the street corner, she whispered, "Tonight felt like a dream, but tomorrow you'll go back to your world, and I'll go back to mine." Maverick stopped. He gently took her hand. "What if I don't want to go back without you?" he said. Weeks turned into months, yet the memory of that night never faded. What began as an awkward evening of loneliness slowly bloomed into something far deeper and more powerful. Mavericks didn't try to sweep Mia away into a world of glittering jewels and luxury mansions. Instead, he chose to walk into her world. He visited her neighborhood, the little corner bakery she loved, and the park where children laughed despite the struggles of their families. He didn't just bring her expensive gifts, he brought his time, his attention, and his heart. Quietly, without making her feel small, he helped her pay overdue bills. Gently, with encouragement that felt like sunlight, he reminded her of her old dream of becoming a teacher. Mia began to believe again. For the first time in years, she felt her dreams weren't impossible. With Mavericks by her side, she returned to her studies, her confidence growing with every passing day. Mia never saw him as a billionaire. To her, he wasn't the man with endless money and power. He was the man who listened to her fears, who walked with her in the cold nights, and who made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. And Mavericks, he loved her for everything the world overlooked. Not for beauty painted with glamour, but for her pure honesty, her resilience, and the way she made life feel real. One evening, under the same city lights where they had walked after the restaurant, Mavericks stopped. The night was quiet, the streets glowing, and his heart beat with a certainty he had never known. He took her hand, his voice deep and tender. "I was stood up that night," he whispered, his eyes fixed on hers. "But it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it led me to you." Mia's lips trembled as a smile formed. Tears shone in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming beauty of his words. "And I found someone who saw me, not my poverty, not my struggles, but me." They stood there, two souls who had come from opposite worlds, yet fit together perfectly. It wasn't money that tied them. It wasn't pity or need. It was love, real, raw, and unshakable. Their story didn't explode through headlines or newspapers. It wasn't shouted to the world. Instead, it spread quietly, through neighbors, friends, and the communities Mavericks began to help after Mia inspired him to look beyond himself. Together, they showed others that love doesn't ask for bank accounts or beauty standards. It asks only for truth, kindness, and a heart willing to see another soul. And so the billionaire who once thought he had everything, and the poor girl who thought she had nothing, discovered the one thing that made life whole: love. Lesson of the story. True love doesn't care about wealth, status, or appearance. It cares about the heart. Mavericks had money that could buy the world, yet he felt empty until he met Mia, a woman who had almost nothing but dignity, kindness, and dreams. Their story shows that love grows when two souls see each other's worth beyond riches or poverty. It also teaches society an important truth. Judging people by money, class, or background is a mistake. The richest life is not the one filled with luxury, but the one filled with compassion, respect, and genuine connection. In the end, the billionaire learned that his greatest treasure wasn't in banks or businesses. It was in loving and being loved by someone real. And Mia proved that even in struggle, a pure heart can shine brighter than gold.